Hi, everyone. Welcome to Active Love Adoptions podcast. I'm your host, Makenzie Love. On this week's episode, my husband, Ryan Love, and I will be discussing our unique adoption journey. To share some context on the podcast you're about to listen to, Ryan and I married shortly after we placed our son for adoption nearly 11 years ago. And since we've had 4 children of our own, we realize our adoption story and our relationship may be unique, which is why we're excited to share it with you, in hopes that some of our listeners may identify and benefit from what's discussed. There's a lot to unpack here, and we appreciate you following along. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, we weren't able to go into detail or touch on specifics. So if you have any questions for Ryan or I, or you're interested in the process of adoption, please feel free to reach out to Makenzie, Makenzie, at activeloveadoptions.com. Welcome to the Active Love Adoptions family.
Thanks for having me, Kens. It's been really special for me to watch you start this new career, this new job that you've started. And I've been able to watch your journey and doing these podcasts, and I've been extremely impressed by you. I know that this hasn't been an easy journey for you. And just the fact that you chose to work in this profession for this adoption agency, it's extremely bold, and I certainly appreciate what you're doing and the vulnerability that you're showing. I think that it's important because from what I've seen of you, it's allowed other people who may be in similar positions to connect with you. And I know that this hasn't been an easy thing for you. You mentioned that I'm a birth father and you're the birth mother. We've experienced things that a lot of people don't. And the fact that you're able to do a podcast like this, it's really important. And I know how hard it is for you. Sometimes, you come home and you tell me how hard it is for you to talk about some things that, maybe you feel uncomfortable talking about because of your own journey and your own experiences. And for that, I want to say I'm proud of you. And I know that what we're going to talk about today isn't going to be easy. As a matter of fact, it should be known that you've been dreading talking about this.
I really
publicly.
have. This is our first time.
This is our first time. And, we talk about this with our friends, with our close friends, people who we trust. But I think it's time, to talk about it in the open, and multiple people have said, you have such a unique story, and we're about to share that with you all. You have such a unique story. You can write a book about it. And I think that's certainly true. And so what we'll share with you today is just a little glimpse of what we went through, our perspectives, our experiences, in hopes that somebody out there can connect. And I think that we'll find people that can connect with us.
Yeah.
Though our story is unique, there are certainly people out there that want to hear our story, hear our perspective, and, hopefully that'll help them heal or navigate their experiences through adoption as well. So
yeah.
Where do we start? This is my first time.
First of all, you're not supposed to make me cry right in the beginning of everything. But yeah, I'm excited. Like you said, it's been hard for me. It's been hard to open up. I think that's kind of why, like in my other podcasts, you can tell I'm a little uncomfortable, and I'm like really quick to just like jump to the next question, because it does take a lot of energy for me to process that and to be okay with being so open and vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think I've told you that, right? Like I say, just be yourself. You're so cute. You're so charismatic. And when I see you on, some of the previous podcasts, I just want to say, Ken, just want to shake you. Ken,
I know, just loosen up.
Just be yourself.
I know.
I understand it is a difficult thing for you to talk about being a birth mother. And I'm excited to share this studio with you today and to guide you and hold your hand through this conversation. So
yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. It's a great question. I
think you reached out to people on social media, right?
That's what I was going to say.
To see what people want to know, right? Yeah. And what was the overall, what were some of the responses there?
So every person that comes on our podcast, we ask them to post on their social media and ask the people that are closest to them what they want to know about their adoption story. And we always say every journey with adoption is special and it's different. And like you said, we have a very unique story, and we talk with people that are close to us. And, you and I have personally helped
a lot of people place, and we have a lot of friends that have adopted. And so adoption has always been in our relationship. And a lot of people on social media, when I asked, they just want to know our story. They just want to know it from like the beginning to the end. They just want to know
point A to point Z.
Yeah, how we got here and how we're still together and how
That's a heavy load. I'm not sure they're
not ready.
I'm not sure they're ready for
Yeah, they're not ready. But yeah, just trying to, I mean, marriage is hard enough, but when you've gone through the trauma and the things we've gone through, like, you know, placing a child, how do you, I mean, I even remember thinking to myself, okay, this is it. Like, I can never have a relationship with this guy because we made such a huge step and we placed our first son. Like, how do you even navigate that? Yeah,
this, right?
it is. And so for me, you know, I mean, our relationship is like a 1 in a million thing. And I think you and I had to have a lot of hard times. We had to have a lot of hard conversations with people around us. We had to be super vulnerable with everyone. I don't think anyone was really cheering us on at all. So yeah. So I say we just start from the beginning and we'll see where that takes us. You want to start?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that it should be known that you were a teenager at the time. I was fairly young as well, in my early 20s. And, you know, if we're going to take it back to the beginning, it should also be known that our relationship initially for the first year or two was strictly physical.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of the vulnerability that I'm saying that so people can connect with me on this. It's not like you and I are the only ones that had a physical only relationship, right?
Sure.
It's common, and people do experience that in relationships. And people do get pregnant and are put in difficult situations sometimes where they need to make mature decisions. And so let it be known, our relationship was purely physical.
Yeah.
And I think that you could probably agree with that. Maybe you
100%,
had maybe
yeah.
a little bit more feelings than I did at the time.
Yeah, probably. I mean, just to give like a perspective on things, we both met in Provo, Utah. Mm-hmm. Ryan was playing football at BYU. It was actually a Halloween party, and I was there with all my friends. Ryan was there with all of his friends.
I think I had my shirt off and I was somebody from Jersey Shore, maybe.
Yes, you were.
Just to date us a little bit. I was somebody from Jersey Shore.
You were someone from Jersey Shore. And I'm pretty sure I was like so timid and shy at that point. I don't think I even dressed up that night. So.
No, you were a kitty cat.
I was a kitty cat? Yeah. I don't even remember. Yeah. I couldn't even tell you. But that sounds right.
I'll never forget that.
Well, that sounds right. But even that first time we met, we didn't really even make a connection until later, which is really funny because I find it so interesting that people come in and out of your life for a reason. And I truly believe that. And I truly believe that, you know, we connected and we didn't even know it at that point. And then from there on out, we had such a strong physical connection with each other, you know, which led into...
Well, I suppose it led into you getting pregnant.
Yeah, led into me getting pregnant.
Right.
So,
and so you did get pregnant, and then we were forced to make a mature decision.
Yeah.
2 immature children forced to make a mature decision, which is, again, part of the vulnerability, and again, something that's extremely common.
Yeah.
And so what did we do from there?
Honestly, and I mean, I'm just going to be
I'd love for you to kind of share what some of your initial thoughts were, maybe.
Sure.
Right.
The night that I found out I was pregnant, I actually was supporting a friend who thought she was pregnant, which is really funny. So I had no idea. For me to get a positive test and my friend to get a negative test, you can imagine the shock that I went through. I was not even, like, I didn't even think it was a chance. That's where my mind was at. So to find out you're pregnant at 19, I was living in my grandma's basement. My stepdad was in the Air Force and they were in Korea. So I didn't have my mom and dad there to help me. I didn't have really any support and I had no idea where to go from there. In my mind, adoption wasn't even an option and abortion was not an option for me in my Christian faith. So I honestly thought, wow, here I go. I'm about to be a mom at 19. And I always promised myself, I mean, if you look at I shared some of my stories on Instagram about what I wanted my life to be. And I was only 8 years old when I wrote that out, 8 or 9 years old. And I wrote out that I wasn't going to be a mom until I was like 28 years old. Is there even a chance that Ryan and I can be together? You know, a million things went through my head, and I had no idea where to even start. I think you were the first one to come to me and say, well, maybe we should look into adoption. And I remember looking you in the face and being like, I am not giving my child away. Like, that's the last thing I'm going to do. And we went back and forth for a few weeks. And then you said there is a convention at Utah Valley. Was it Utah Valley that we went to?
Yeah, I think it was at UVU, right?
Yeah, UVU.
There's a convention on adoption.
Yeah.
And I think there was a panel of women and families who just shared their experiences and their stories. I think that's what it was.
Yeah. So you came and picked me up. We went to this convention, and it opened my eyes to being like, okay, there are other options to what we're going through right now. And I think that was the first time I ever thought about placing our birth son for adoption. And it took me a few months to kind of wrap my mind around it. But I think you and I both agreed that that would be what was best, because at that time our relationship was strictly physical. We've talked about this many times.
I don't know if we've had any intentions of moving forward.
No,
or progressing our relationship.
I might have wanted it at some point, and I think it's because I was carrying your child. Like, I think that's like the automatic,
that connection.
Yeah, the connection we had, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, I'm having your kid. Like, we should at least try, you know what I mean? But I think after some conversations and, you know, some of the things that we went through, we both felt like the best thing for us was to place our child. And I honestly didn't even know where to start. So that was my entire thought process. And I'm sure as a birth father, you had, you know, a different perspective. And I would really love for you to share that.
Yeah. So, you know, initially, you know, when you let me know that you were pregnant,
I think we should share that story.
Sure, go ahead. Okay. I'll kick it off to you.
So I was working at Carrabba's, and I honestly, you know, after that night, I decided to just like take a few weeks to figure out what I wanted to do. And I know we're going backwards, but just to like figure out exactly what I wanted before I let you know what was going on. And I remember you walking into the restaurant. I was the host at the time. I was only 19, so I couldn't serve. And you said, I need to talk to you. And I was like, well, I'm working. I was like, can we talk later? And you're like, I know you're pregnant. And I was like, Clay, I need a break. I gotta go for a second. And I just remember sitting down and talking to you, and you were, I mean, I could be wrong, but I just remember you being excited. Like, wow, cool. Like, all right, let's figure this out. Not, yeah, cool, but yeah. Okay. Like, you know, yeah,
I had some sort of intuition. Yeah. And it probably was the way that you were acting. I think that could have been
just not talking to you.
Well, that and, you know, emotional and those natural things that come with finding out that you're pregnant with somebody that you're not with.
Yeah.
Right. Especially living in a community in Provo, that's a heavy religious community. There's all of these expectations. And for you to get pregnant by somebody who you're not with, nonetheless, you know, you're not married to me. That's a heavy lift, and it's a lot to take in for a young person in this environment. And so I felt that from you.
Yeah.
I felt there was a change, and so I knew you were pregnant, and I just felt the urge to go and just let you know
right
that
then,
you were pregnant.
Yeah. Right then and there, and you're right. I grew up in a very religious family. I was very religious, and I was going through a really hard time, and I was reaching out in different ways to find attention. I was just trying to find myself at that point in time. And I think that was probably the hardest part is, you know, 10, 11 years ago, people weren't as open as they are now to
that sort of news.
Yeah, that
Right.
news, especially my parents.
Right.
Like, I feel like I've kind of warmed I don't know. My parents are.
Well, I suppose you and I both did.
Yeah, we both did. I think
we can argue that I'm probably the favorite child of your family.
You definitely are. I don't like admitting that, but you are 100% the favorite child now. So it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem fair.
There's a long journey, let's say that.
Yeah, it was a long journey to get there, but I'll give it to you. Whatever. I used to be the favorite, and I'll give it to you. So yeah, I think that was probably the hardest part for me, because I also lived in my grandparents' basement, who are also very religious. And to let them know that I got pregnant under their care, I knew I was going to crush my grandma, especially. I was very open with her. She knew every guy I was dating. She knew everything I was doing, except for you. I kept you out of that. So you can imagine. I know, that's why she's still. You're also her favorite too, so that's not fair. But yeah, I think that was a really hard part.
Yeah,
of everything we went through.
I'd like to share a little bit of my thought process too, and somewhat of my perspective, and that is, we've shared up until this point kind of what happened physically between us, and then you getting pregnant, and then me finding out that you're pregnant, and just to share some information about where I was at that point in my life. I was living in Utah all by myself. My extended family was in California, and living at a friend's house, feeling alone. This happens with a woman that I'm not with at the time, and other than a romantic relationship. And so my childhood growing up, I think that played a lot into my thought process in bringing the adoption component up, and that is that of a child who lived with a single mother for most of my life, not having a father figure in my life, feeling alone because of that loss of a father. And that's something that I didn't want to recreate. I remember vividly as a child thinking, I don't want to ever allow my children to feel this way that I'm feeling as a child. And so I had a deep fear of recreating that and giving a child the same experience that I had, which I would never want for any child. And so I could go into details about my childhood, but I think I covered that. Just I don't want that to happen again. Yeah. Essentially. And I think that's where my thought process turned me onto adoption. Obviously, I wasn't interested in abortion either. But what I knew was this, and that is, you and I weren't interested in progressing our relationship at the time.
Yeah.
And we were having a baby. And I also knew that I wanted everything for that child. And that's something that you and I, at least my thought process at the time, couldn't give this child.
Yeah.
Because we weren't together, because we weren't in love. And that's something that I've always wanted to give my children, is that love from a mother and a father. And so I think that's kind of my inspiration for researching, investigating adoption with you, just to give, to find parents who I would want as my own and give that to my child, right? And so I suppose we can then move forward with the story, and, we looked, right?
Yeah.
We looked for people. This is the first time that you and I had experienced looking for parents to place our child for, and the adoption journey in general.
Yeah.
It was new to us. It was new to our families. It was new to our friends. And so then and there we felt alone.
Yeah.
Right. Because again, we grew up in a religious environment, and people certainly didn't agree with our actions at the time. So you and I felt alone.
Yeah. And
we were working on this journey together. I remember that we were in your apartment, and, Facebook was great for us. Yeah. Asking friends and so forth was great for us. Yeah. And I remember you asked, it was a bold move, but it worked. You asked Facebook, your friends on Facebook, who do you know that would be interested in a child?
Yeah. Well, and I want to stop you just really fast.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you remember, but I actually went to LDS services.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, because I had Googled myself, where do I go?
Yeah.
If we're going to do adoption, where do I go? And I remember talking to a social worker and she said, okay, we have this for you. We're going to do this for you. And I'm going to send you 200 profiles of adoptive parents that are looking to adopt. And my heart just kind of sunk. And I was like, there's 200 families looking to adopt right now. And here I am at 19, pregnant on accident. And just remember feeling like the guilt, the heaviness that came from that. And even though, at that time, I couldn't pinpoint why I was feeling so anxious being there. I thought for sure, I was like, oh no, I'm just supposed to keep my son. Like this is, maybe that's why I'm feeling so anxious about this. And I remember coming home and you came over to my apartment and I said, she's sending me these families. Let's go through them. And I just remember us going through and we were extremely thorough. We were reading every story of everybody and we were crying and we like felt like so much love for these families, but none of them felt right to us. Even I remember you even looking at me and being like, we just went through all those families and nothing feels right. And I said, I know. I was like, is this our sign that we're supposed to just co-parent? Like, what are we supposed to do? And I just remember, and you're right, I've always been bold. I think everyone knows that. I've kind of always been like outspoken, kind of do what I want when I want. And I do remember posting on social media what I'm best at. And you and I got how many messages from people? I mean,
yeah, your inbox was flooded.
Like within an hour.
Right.
We had all of our friends. I mean, like over 500 messages.
Right.
And as we were going through, I just remember calling you and being like, you're not going to believe this. I was like, we have like 500 people on Facebook wanting to adopt our child. And that was overwhelming too. It's like, how do we choose the right one? Like, I mean, there's so many to choose from.
Yeah.
How do we choose? And as we were going through the messages, our adopted parents came up multiple times.
Yeah, which is remarkable, actually. Like, if you think about it, I think that there were maybe 5 to 10 references pointing to the same family, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, gosh, there must be something with this family.
Right.
And there must be something special with this family.
Yeah. Well, and I remember hearing that name over and over and over again. And out of respect, we're not going to say any names, but I remember hearing both of their names over and over again and being like, why does that sound so familiar? And then it clicks that they actually were family friends growing up with my biological dad and my mom. My parents got a divorce. And they all used to play softball together growing up. So I would always go to their softball games with them. And
so they remember little Kenzie running around.
Yeah, they remember little Kenzie being annoying, yelling at my parents as they're trying to play. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this feels weird. This is the first time that I feel a little excited, a little, not excited. I don't think excited is a good word for that. Hopeful.
Yeah.
Hopeful. I was hopeful that it was actually going to work out. So I remember reaching out to them and I think I messaged her on Facebook. I think I found her and I added her as a friend and I messaged her and I said, your name has come up multiple times. I'm pregnant. I'm 19 years old and I've been looking for someone to, and at this time I didn't know any proper wordage, but I said, I am looking to give away my son to a family that's looking. I was like, I think you know me from my past. I think you know my parents. You just feel right. I would love to meet with you guys. And immediately she says, well, let's go to dinner. Where would you like to go? And I was like, I don't care. I mean, I eat McDonald's and Cafe Rio, I think at the time was like my meal plan. And
it still is, honey.
It still is, unfortunately. So we went to dinner. You and I both went together and we talked with them. I felt like it was so natural. It was a natural conversation. They were so sweet.
What were your thoughts during that dinner? Because I remember specifically what mine are, and I'll share mine in a minute. But I just want you to share what was going on in your head as we were meeting our potential
adoptive parents.
Adoptive parents, yeah.
Well, and to I love that question. To go even back again, my parents were divorced, and my mom married someone in the Air Force, and he ended up adopting me, and I ended up taking his name, even though it was such a great thing. And I got, another father to love me and to teach me. And now I mean, I can't say enough good things about my biological dad and my stepdad, because they both are so different that they've taught me everything I need to know in life. Taught me how to change tires, oil change by the age of like 15. Like I could do anything. I could build anything. Yeah, right. I could build anything. I could do anything. And I was, at the time when you're a teenager, you're just like, this is annoying. But now as an adult and as a mom, I'm the one that changes our lights in the house. I'm the one. I'm sorry. I'm calling you out, man. No, I'm calling you out.
Let's leave out those details. All right. I'm going to need my oil change next week, by the way.
Yeah, cool. So. Okay. I got you. But I remember just being like, even though it was so amazing and I got to have this awesome dad in the Air Force, he flies planes, he flies jets, he took in 4 kids at the age of 33 and didn't blink an eye. Don't get me wrong. We went through some really hard times trying to adjust, but at the end of the day, I was so grateful for both my dads. And I think that honestly was what was going through my mind, just like it was in your mind, where I wanted that mom and dad that were together, that could give that child everything that, darn it, I almost got through it without crying. Both of us grew up with parents who were not together. All of our parents did their best to raise us. And I mean, I think they did a pretty damn good job. At the end of the day, I think you and I both wanted a couple that was together and were willing to work together to be the best parents they could be.
Yeah.
And I think that's what was long answer to that question of yours. But I think that's what was going through my mind was, wow, these people love each other. These people are just like me and you. I feel like Annette and I are almost the same person. We think the same way. We talk with each other. We can communicate very easily. We wanted someone that was interested in sports. I mean, I grew up playing sports. You grew up playing sports. My parents grew up playing sports. And that was something that was important. I wanted him to be athletic. I wanted him to, have that experience, because I feel like that is actually something that bonded my family together, was sports. And I wanted that for him. There was so much that was going through my mind. And even to this day, I don't think I could tell you every little thing that I love about them, because there's just too much. But it just clicked. It just felt right for the first time after looking at 700 plus people. It just felt good. It just felt right.
I have a testimony that it was the same for me. It felt organic.
Yeah.
It did feel right. It was easy to speak with them. And I think the thing, going into that situation was really interesting. Like, we didn't know what to expect, right? We didn't know how we were going to feel.
So
We didn't know where the conversation was going to go. We wanted to be mindful of all perspectives, and including theirs. And so we just didn't know what was going to happen out of that. But I do remember vividly thinking, it's really easy to speak with these people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of love here.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about who I would like to place my child to, I wanted, and you hit on that a little bit, what some of our interests were. I was more so thinking about the father figure. The mother figure is important as well. But for me, I wanted, like I mentioned before, I wanted to give my child the best father possible. And I remember sitting down with them and looking at him and gosh, I'm going to tear up too. Thinking, I would love this guy to be my dad. And I knew right then that that was the right family for us. And so we both walked away from that, getting in the car and feeling right.
Yeah.
Right. And that made it easy for us, I think.
Yeah.
Because after that point, we didn't search any longer. We didn't want to.
Yeah.
They were the first family that we met with, and they were the ones.
Yeah.
And so moving forward then, we stayed in communication with them.
Yeah.
And even that next few months was interesting for us because, you know, we've met with attorneys, and we went down that process, that legal process with adoption. But, you know, we still didn't know how our emotions would take us, where those would go.
Yeah.
Right. It's a long journey. That 9 months is a long journey.
Yeah.
And,
but I don't know if you remember, we didn't choose the final adoptive parents until I was 7 months along.
right.
So it was, we ended up having just a few months before, I gave birth, and then that was it. So,
Right.
so yeah, I do feel like those months were really long. Especially in pregnancy, I feel like those last few months just last forever. And I remember my experience when we got into the car, you and I both just looked at each other and we knew. Like, we didn't even have to say anything, and we both just like burst into tears. And I just remember being like, yeah, this is it. And you're like, yep, this is it. We had such an emotional conversation with them, and they were very vulnerable with us, and we were very vulnerable with them. And, they asked all the right questions, and it just clicked. And so, yeah, those last few months were really rough for us, because we're like, okay, what now? And as adoptive parents, those last few months are also probably last forever, because you're like, oh no, are they going to back out? How's this going to end? I'm sure that they have their own perspective on all of that.
I think that you and I did a really good job at understanding their perspective as well, right? I remember having conversations with you and thinking how hard it must be as somebody who would like to adopt a child, not knowing whether or not you were going to go through with it.
Right.
And that's a reality of adopting children.
Yeah.
And there's multiple perspectives in all of these situations, and they're all unique and they're all different. And, sometimes the mother doesn't go through with it and decides to keep her child, which is perfectly okay.
Yeah. Well, and you have no control over that.
They don't have control over
exactly.
it, right? Yeah. And so it's a tough situation to be in. It's a very emotional situation to be in. And I think you and I did a really good job at understanding that and keeping an open dialogue.
Yeah.
I remember speaking, you and I speaking together about just keeping them informed and being completely honest and transparent with them.
Well, yeah. And before going on to that, we waited, I think 3 days. I don't know, maybe it was even sooner. And I just gave her a call. I want you to be his mom. And I just remember both of us just bursting into tears. And at that moment, I knew I was making the right decision, as hard as that was. And the cool thing with adoption is there is loss and there's gain, but I feel like it's equal on both sides. And I know some people are going to argue with that, but to me, I feel like I sacrificed, something that was very important to me, something that was very hard, but we also gained this family that we love and cherish. These adoptive parents, it's been 11 years now, and we're still all such good friends. And, we go to our birth son's karate class with his entire extended family. And I think something that I love too is that their grandparents are so involved in their life, in our birth son's life and in his brother's life. And all their uncles and aunts love them and are there. And, they don't look at him any different. He's a part of their family. And not only him, but you and I and our kids, we're just one big family. And I feel like with adoption, I know how rare, I know how special that is. And I keep that into perspective, we're really lucky to have that kind of relationship with them. And it means so much to me. So after telling the adoptive mom that we were going to place with her, she was so excited, like I said before. And, those next few months, she would come over and check on me. She would, I had car trouble. She was the first person that came to help me. She, like, anytime I needed something, she was always there. And it wasn't like, oh, I know you're giving me my child, so I'll be there for you. It was, you felt her love. You felt that she looked at me as one of her kids. She wanted to protect me.
She was very genuine.
Oh yeah.
And some of those actions. And I remember feeling that way too. It was pure love. And it was awesome that she was able to reach out and help us in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it was really weird. I would have a really hard time that day, and she would just show up at my doorstep and she's like, I know I don't want to intrude, but I brought you dinner. I just felt like you needed it. And I would just like burst into tears and be like, thank you. How did you know I really need you right now? And, my mom was gone. My mom was in Korea, and I lived with two of my best friends that were so great and so loving and so willing to help me, but it just didn't take,
well, you were still alone.
I was.
Right.
No one really understood what I was going through.
Right.
They tried, and they tried to, be there the best they could, but I don't think anyone really could. But for some reason, I keep wanting to say her name. The adoptive mom knew exactly what I needed. It was like we were just in sync, and she would show up when I needed her, and she was always so loving and, just there for me.
It's back to some of the reasons why we chose them, some of their personality traits and their maternal and paternal, right, feelings. And gosh, it just felt right. Yeah. And they were so right, and they made us feel so great, and they loved us so much. And those are the things that we didn't have that we were looking for in ourselves. And so I think that played a lot into us wanting to place our child and giving them their love, the love that they shared with us.
Yeah.